One thing that I did learn from having lived in the US is that, the charisma vote is bigger than policy. So Americans will vote for the coolest guy, or the one that sounds more convincing. Now, Trump to me is a used car salesman. I wouldn't buy a car from him, but Americans probably would, because he knows what to say, when to say it, how he manipulates an outcome. And it's so bombarded. You're so bombarded that you have to surrender and just give in and say, and he must be right, because he's repeating it. But I personally would say, listen, guys, again, as I said before, I am an American president, and I'm not saying whether it's one or the other, but an American president is that, a president of the United States. I represent every single one of you, despite the fact that you vote one or the other. You may have voted against me, that's fine, but my responsibility is to take care of you as well, and your family. So let's just put our differences aside for a little bit. Remember that we've got one flag.
I get that, but I don't think I agree with it, because you can't compromise on something like racism.
But something has to unite them.
So what, you just turn a blind eye to racism?
No, but
I remember
the stepping stone, the first step would be, it's been a disaster. This year has been a nightmare. Let's just get together and just put our differences aside and try to come up with something that will bring us together. I hear you in terms of the racism. That's an embedded thing. That's been embedded since slavery.
Pretty
right?
Yeah.
There's a Confederate flag that people are as passionate about that flag as they are about the American flag. In fact, in many cases, in different states, they're flown together.
100%,
right?
Yeah.
So I had the unfortunate experience where my brain melted, having met someone who I imagine, at the time I didn't know whether they were Republican or Democrat. I just saw them as Americans. But one of the most repugnant people I have ever met, or a group of people I've ever met, were passionate about the Confederate style, which implies to me that they would have been Republicans.
Yeah.
Right? I've seen racism, but I've never seen the face of racism like I looked into there. And I can't even remember the state that I was in, but I was traveling around, and I was at a restaurant. I can't remember the name. It'll come to me, but it was just a conversation that I was having in a restaurant. Denny's restaurant in the United States. So I remember that part. The state will come to me. And these people were, you would shoot them in the face if we as Australians had met them. You wouldn't believe that they're real people with such vile, something wrong. But there's an entire subculture within the United States that is that. I know that every nation has got its ugly side. I get it. But something to be so overtly repugnant in public, carrying guns, is wrong.
Well, I think what you've kind of just given me the inspiration to say, if I was elected, or you asked me what I would do if I was elected president tomorrow to fix America. Yeah. I think you said unify America, but really the crux of it is, what would you do to fix America? Yeah. I would fix America by, first of all, eliminating any form of bigotry. Now, how do you do that? You simply say that. So, I remember when Israel Folau, the Australian Rugby Union player, put up all those Twitter posts saying homosexuals are going to burn in hell unless they repent. There was this whole outrage because Rugby Australia booed him.
They shut it out.
Fuck off. You're not coming back. That's enough. None of that bigotry shit. And then every fucking Christian out there, I have Christian family members who are very active on Facebook and social media at this point going, oh, this is our religious freedom under attack. He's allowed to say this because it's his religious freedom. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you choose to be fucking religious. You chose that religion. The young kid who listens to this hate speech from Israel Folau, who's probably a big fan of Israel Folau, and is now probably fucking suicidal because he's a gay kid who looked up to this guy and he's suddenly his hero's, being, bigoted against him. He didn't choose to be who he is. And that's the difference. This is the difference between people who choose to be racist. They choose to be racist. You don't choose to be black. You choose to be homophobic. You don't choose to be gay. So, really, they're the ones that should be outlawed, not the gay people, not the black people. And that's a very utopian way of putting it. And you say, how do you fix that? Well, great question.
They got rid of they pushed for the abolishment of the Confederate flag,
which they did.
in Daytona.
I know, being NASCAR, being a motor racing guy myself, like that was a massive moment for NASCAR to come out and ban the Confederate flag was huge, and it was a massive step forward.
I didn't think that was possible.
And as it was when the only black NASCAR driver, Bubba Wallace, took a knee, and all the other NASCAR drivers took a knee with him. That was a huge moment, and that's probably pissed off a lot of their supporter base, but they've said, you know what, I'm taking a line in the sand, this is the right thing to do. If you have different beliefs, then we don't want you watching our motor racing, go away.
That is
what
commendable.
more people need to stand up and say, we're not tolerating this, we don't want your business, we don't want association with you if this is your belief.
And that you're right. I mean, that's definitely so. Because I thought to myself, when you suggested, well, let's cut down on race, or let's confront the racism.
It needs to be criminalised. That's essentially what it needs to be. If you're flying Confederate flag, you know what it means. It's a racist symbol. It's a racist symbol. No one would deny that it's a racist symbol. It's essentially the American version of the swastika.
Perfect, because I was about to say that in Germany, if you were to do the Hail sign,
you would go to jail.
Get 6 months.
If you fly a Confederate flag, you should go to jail for racism.
6 months. I agree. So Germans recognized, we fucked up. Okay, but that's, half German. You and I, whatever has happened in the past by other people, we're actually not to blame. We're trying to fix it. And in order to fix it, we have to recognize there was something wrong in the past. So we cannot allow it to occur again in the future. So in the current Germany, they don't even joke.
No, they've got laws against it.
They've got laws against it, 6 months. But they don't even do it because of the 6 months imprisonment. They do it not because they're ashamed.
It's national shame.
It's pride. It's like, no, we're Germans, and shit went down. It wasn't our fault, but we're not even going to mess around. We're not even going to joke.
We'll take responsibility for it.
So we take responsibility. We're adults. We know how to do it. Americans, not so much.
Well, I mean, the same could be argued for Australia. I mean, remember, after the Cronulla riots, when suddenly all the bogan racists started getting Southern Cross tattoos, and that became a racist symbol, didn't it? I mean, I feel like that's stopped now,
But
if you're someone with a Southern Cross tattoo, what do you automatically think?
Isn't that sad, though? Because originally, let's say prior to the Cronulla riots, that was a sign of pride.
It was a sign of Australia. And, it didn't matter if you're Aboriginal, white Australian, immigrant Australian. It was a source of pride, and then it was hijacked in the same way that it was hijacked to be a symbol, exactly the same as the Confederate flag, and exactly the same as the swastika.
Here's the problem with that, because I've got tats and I wanted to get tats and stuff, and there's 20% of Australian soldiers who have the Southern Cross tattooed on them. Right, so Okay, so they do it as a sense of pride
Yep.
for their nation and
Yep.
what they defend and what they were willing to sacrifice, right?
Yeah, but
then the
and that's what I
Cronulla
mean.
riots
It was
happened.
hijacked.
It
It was a
was
symbol
hijacked.
that was hijacked by racists.
That's right. But now, if you were to see someone with the Southern Cross,
You would
you'd
automatically think they're a racist.
And the poor guy was like, no, this is prior to, you know what I mean? It's like,
It's a
what?
tattoo. It's
You
not.
have
It's
the
not
shit,
permanent, is it?
yeah?
I mean, it is
Oh, it
kind
is
of permanent.
permanent.
Well, but I mean, you can get it amended.
No, but
Put a
what I'm-
flag around it.
Yeah, but isn't it funny how we just
Like, there's ways you can
we can
fix
just
it.
change things that are elegant, or respectable, and then just deteriorate them and make them ugly. Now our job, or the American job, is to make things that are ugly and make them acceptable. There's no way, I don't believe, of making a Confederate flag acceptable because of what it represents.
It needs to be banned.
And
if that flies,
completely.
in the face of so-called American freedoms, then so be it. You know, I'm sorry, but like, America is not the only country in the world with freedom. They'd like to think they are, but like, we have freedom. Canada has freedom. New Zealand has freedom. Great Britain. There's hundreds
don't
of
know
countries that have freedom.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm
but
trying
freedom
think
to
how,
us
how you're going to
isn't.
sell it to. I'm trying to hear you.
It's
through
education. It comes down to
Americanese.
education.
Yeah.
It comes down to a syllabus that acknowledges the issues. It comes down to teaching people this is a problem
Yeah.
and this is how we fix it.
The funny-
It comes from education.
because we're touching on. Obviously, the election is a raw subject right now. It's hitting a nerve because we've only got 2.5 weeks or so.
4 weeks, yeah.
4 weeks
It'd
before.
be interesting to see how well this podcast ages.
And if we were, I think while you were talking, I was thinking, wow, if you became president, you'd have a lot on your plate to begin with. Like, racism is
Who'd
just
want
one
the
thing.
job? Who would want the
Racism is
job?
just yeah, exactly. It doesn't pay enough. Racism is just the tip of the iceberg. We were fortunate enough to have somebody that said, you know what, I don't want any more Australians killed by weapons. And we had an amnesty and we had a trade-off and we eliminated weapons. And yes, Americans will say,
I think whether you're a conservative or a progressive in Australia, I think that's one thing that all Australians would agree upon, or the vast majority of Australians would agree upon, was a great call. It was a great political move. It was a great call for our country.
And I've tried to explain that to my American friends, and they don't see it like that at all. And no amount of common sense, rationality seems to penetrate this psyche on what we have done.
I mean, America's love of guns comes from the Second Amendment, right? Which was an amendment created back in the days. It was created back in the days when muskets were the guns.
Yeah.
So they didn't know there were M16s and AR-15s around when this amendment was created. And people who try to argue this is our constitutional right, you can't change it. Well, you can. It's called an amendment.
Yeah.
It's what it is in the first place. And the whole point of the Second Amendment was for the people to be able to rise up against a tyrannical government.
Yeah.
Right? That was the whole purpose of the Second Amendment. What do we have right now in America? Would you not argue that Trump's government is a tyrannical government? Yet the people who are rising up with their guns are his supporters.
Here's the thing. No one's got the absolute answer, otherwise it would be nice. But if you were to ask an American, what is the Seventh Amendment? And I said to them, you cannot walk chickens on a collar across the road. That's the Seventh Amendment. They would probably believe me because they don't know.
Do you know what the Seventh Amendment is?
Sadly, unfortunately, as a result of their obsession with weapons, I don't know what the Seventh Amendment is.
Well, I mean, the
Because I've been too
first Amendment
distracted.
is free speech, right?
There's 5.
I think
well,
the first
I know the
Amendment
first,
is
the second, and
free
the fifth.
speech. Well,
plead
the fifth is the right not to speak.
Well, that's only because with my meeting.
Yeah.
having
Well, it's
met
in
the law in
movies
the
and
United
stuff,
States.
I plead the fifth.
I plead the fifth
Yeah.
means I don't speak.
Yeah.
My First Amendment is. What is the First Amendment?
Free speech.
Free speech. Second Amendment is weapons.
Yeah.
And the fifth. What the fuck are the other 10?
Well, do they even exist though? Maybe they've already been overturned. Who knows?
They do have whatever number. I don't know. Maybe you can
there's
Google
probably
it.
hundreds for all we know. Like
But what is there? Guys, just calm down. Why don't we just focus? Surely there's an amendment that says don't. It gives Americans some dignity.
if anyone
Why are they
hasn't
so
seen
obsessed?
the Australian comedian Jim Jeffries, who is an Australian who lives in America, he had this whole routine about guns in America. And his routine kind of went so when the Second Amendment was created, it was created to protect America against a tyrannical government, but it was also made in the era of muskets. So he's like, back then it made sense because if you got the shits, this guy banged your wife or whatever, and you're like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, mate. I'm gonna fucking kill you. You go over, get your musket, you're like, oh man, loading your musket, putting all your gunpowder in. By the 5 minutes
It's over.
time's up, you're like, oh fuck, you know what? Couldn't bother. You're an alright dude.
Yeah.
You know, whereas now it's just like boom, open carry, pop a cap in your ass.
It's
a
Wild
different.
West.
It was not. The Second Amendment was not created to protect people's rights to carry a machine gun, but that is how they interpret it.
They choose to interpret.
That's how they choose to interpret it.
Look, they're racist, carry weapons, they're short-tempered, they're religious in a distorted, immoral way because that their God justifies it. It's even on their money.
Yep.
In God I trust, and I can do whatever the fuck I want because I'm backed
Yet
by
they
God.
also have a rule that religion and politics need to be kept
You
separate.
put your hands full as a president.
You do.
I would just, you know what? As a president, I would quietly just let it just burn.
Honestly, it's no surprise that a reality TV star who's evidently broke because he doesn't pay much in tax. It's clear why he can't really run the country, isn't it? I mean, he's not the brightest spark. You know.
We're going to know in 3 or 4 weeks what this is going to pan out. I'd love to be able to say, let's talk again in 4 weeks.
That'd be interesting.
Because I have fear right now for the future of the planet.
Well, I think if Trump... Well, you know, that's another thing we haven't even touched on at all is like climate change and the negative effect that Trump has had on that. You know, he's completely removed protections in Alaska and all of that from drilling for oil in certain environmentally protected spaces. He's removed those protections. And he's removed the bans that prevented trophy hunting and bringing back ivory and things like that to America. He's removed all these things. And it's largely self-serving because his sons like trophy hunting, you know, which I personally find abhorrent, you know. So it's largely self-serving, and I think that effect more so than the socio-political effects negative effects that he's had are probably the most concerning, and why I really dread another 4 years of Trump, because the big oil companies, all of these people that do not have the globe's best interests at heart are going to run roughshod over the rest of the world. They're going to start drilling for more fossil fuels. They're going to reduce the amount of green energy we're producing.
Stop it, rain. With all the Latino brothers hitting down. hombre desde la cuna.
Soy un hombre peligroso porque sé la verdad y no quiero aceptar la falsa amistad que nos ofrecen. Los hijos de puta del norte no sonríen ni apuntan un chumbo al cogote.